This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by Newegg. Whether you're building a new computer, upgrading an existing one, or getting a older laptop back up and running, Newegg has all the parts to help you do that, from power supplies and processors, motherboards, video cards, SSDs, and a whole lot more. And they offer a daily deal. In fact, right now they have an Asus ROG Strix laptop for $1279, which is about $250 off of normal, which is a pretty good deal. But every day they change, so you can find out what the daily deals are and shop all of the the catalog by going to pilchpoint.live/Newegg. So, Avram, it's been a little while since we've been on, and so some stuff has happened.
A fair amount, with I'm sure a lot more to come, because we're getting into crunch time for holiday season. So new products is just kind of a narrow window for companies to get in, to get their stuff in and have people be buying it in time for holiday. Now, I have to say, we should all be kind of honest with ourselves. Who is buying somebody, who is buying somebody like, a $600 CPU or a $2,000 computer with a $600 CPU in it for the holidays? If you're gifting people this, please, let's be friends. Good friends.
Right.
I think a lot of people are gifting themselves these things. So why it has to come out in the exact time for the holiday season is, questionable, but it is the time of year when people do the most shopping and spend the most money. So everything is kind of geared toward
supporting that
this season, toward supporting that. So, we're in the middle of October now. Stuff needs to be out like really, really soon, or else it's missed the season. So Intel, we've heard about NVIDIA's cards. Those are rolling out, the new NVIDIA RTX cards. And now we also have some new CPUs. We also know AMD has a couple of new CPUs as part of its existing Ryzen 2000 series. But the real exciting news is, drum roll please, Intel's 9th Gen Core chips, otherwise known as Coffee Lake Refresh. These are desktop CPUs so far. No word yet on laptop versions of them. And they are, there's three of them. There's the Core i5 9600K, the Core i7 9700K, and the Core i9 9900K. So the 9900K has 8 cores. This is a step up from the last generation, where there was 8. It was 6 cores. It has 8 cores with 16 threads, and operates at a base frequency of 3.6 gigahertz and a boost frequency of 5 gigahertz. It supports up to 128 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, and Intel claims that it is the fastest processor for gaming ever, and on the market now. So interesting that Intel said that to support. So I was at the launch event last Monday, where Intel introduced these new chips, along with a new Xeon chip for workstations and servers, and a new X series chip that had 28 cores. Or is it the Xeon that had 28 cores? Then I think it was the X series chip that had 28 cores, but those are really for either workstations or servers, not particularly, most regular end users who are gaming and doing productivity work.
Sure.
So the Core i9, they claim, is significantly faster, significantly higher frame rates than, say, AMD's closest competitor, which would be the Ryzen 2700X, and Intel hired a company called Principled Technologies, which is a benchmark company, to um, do side by side comparisons. So I'm just going to read you some of it. So
It's never a good sign when you feel you have to read it exact.
so where do we have this? So basically, there were a number. So for example, these tests showed, um, Intel's, and these are supposedly with the same GPU and the same SSD, the same power supply. Obviously, can't have the same motherboard from AMD to Intel.
Sure.
But Intel's i9 got, like, on Counter Strike, Global Offensive, got 440 FPS to 295 on the AMD chip. Now, granted, can you even see more than 295 frames per second? That's an open question. On like Assassin's Creed Origin, it got a 30% higher benchmark score. On Forza Motorsport, it got 50 frames per second more. On Ashes of the Singularity, it got 18 frames per second, which in this case was like 30% more. So according to the numbers that Intel showed everybody, wow, this CPU really makes a difference in gaming, which is a huge portion of the audience is going to be interested in. Well, when people read the fine print of how Principled Technologies tested, there was a big controversy because some of the things that they did were not were not favorable to AMD. So, three things. First, on the AMD chip, they used the stock cooler, but on Intel's chip, they used a really nice aftermarket cooler. Now, their excuse for this, I mean, these things actually to me seem like probably an honest mistake, which is that one of them came with, although they should have known better, the AMD one comes with a cooler and the Intel one does not. So you have to buy an aftermarket cooler for the Intel one.
Got it.
But that's making it. But the better you're cool. For those who don't know, the better cooled your CPU is, the higher speed it will reach, and therefore the faster it will go. So the cooling was not apples to apples. They overclocked the RAM on the Intel computer, but not on the AMD one. And finally, they ran the AMD chip, and they said that AMD had recommended that they do this. But if AMD said that, that wasn't very smart. That they ran it in something called game mode. Well, game mode is, so we all are familiar. A lot of us have heard of game mode on Windows 10. This is not that. This is something for AMD chips only that I think you enable through the BIOS or through software that shuts off half of the cores. So an 8-core processor only uses 4 cores. Why would you do that? The reason that they have such a thing, that they have game mode, it sounds good, like, oh, for games, game mode, so I'll turn on. So that's why they probably did it. But it's meant for the Threadripper processors. So you have a processor that has like 32 cores.
Right.
Well, that actually at some point actually hurts games. Like they get, I don't know if it's overwhelmed or something. Like having all the cores actually hurts the performance.
They end up the processor actually spends more of its time managing the threads back and forth than it does actually performing calculations. There's a certain point where you do more work managing than you do actual work. And
isn't that an argument against the whole against having 32 cores in the first place?
If you're doing that kind of thing, absolutely.
So anyway, most games do not use that many cores. So I don't know how much, even 4 cores maybe was enough. I don't know, but they did run game mode, which turned off 4 of the cores. And they did not turn off the cores on the Intel, let me tell you that. Um, so for those reasons, the whole thing became a big controversy.
Uh-huh.
Intel issued a statement saying, we support principal technologies, or basically they said, like, these are consistent with what we got in our lab, not the same. Then Principal Technologies retested, came out with their own statement, said, hey, we think we did a good job, but we're going to thank you for the feedback. We're going to not retest, we're going to do some more tests.
Uh-huh.
And they did some more tests, I think, addressing the RAM issue and the game mode issue,
Sure.
like not having game mode on. But they did not change the cooler. So after they did that, the AMD chips did better, but they still didn't do better than Intel.
Okay.
And my guess is that Intel is probably better, all things being fair and equal. We don't know this for a fact, though, we'll obviously find out when the full reviews come out, and I'll tell you now that Tom's Hardware will have a full review of the Core i9 as soon as we're allowed to publish one. We will. So people can expect to see expect to see some real test results from journalists such as Tom's Hardware and many of our colleagues, and you should go by those, not by results that are published by the manufacturer.
Uh-huh.
Now, I think honestly that results that are published by the manufacturer, like, they're not just making it up out of whole cloth. So I'm sure the Core i9 CPU is really fast. And given that Intel usually performs better on games than AMD, all other things being equal because of optimizations that for Intel game makers do, and Intel is better at lightly threaded stuff, and most games are lightly threaded. It probably will do better than AMD, but we'll have to see how much better.
Right.
And for the money, is it worth it? Is it worth it? So we'll look forward to seeing that. But the thing is, when you have new processors like this come out, it spurs other things to come out because the industry still follows Intel. So Intel recently came out with some new laptop processors, which were much less exciting because they were still part of the 8th generation, but they were slightly faster clock speeds, and those were codenamed Whiskey Lake. So the Whiskey Lake processors, were announced, I think, in August or September, and now you're starting to see a whole bunch of refreshes of laptops. Why? The laptop vendors generally hold off on some of their big releases until the new chip is out. So we will see a bunch of new desktop releases. We will see a bunch of new motherboard releases. So, it spurs these obviously everyone's disappointed that Intel has not reached 10 nanometers yet and advanced to nearly the next level with its chips. But these are still faster than the chips that came before them, and so that's something to be excited about when you keep having better and more performance. And by the way, that 5 gigahertz is nothing. That's the stock, because we were at their event. We saw they had a professional overclocker with liquid nitrogen. So doing liquid nitrogen overclocks is not something most people can do. It's expensive. They usually have teams. Like, I was looking into how easy would it be for us to do it in the office, and people were telling me, like, we had to spend several $100s on like a pot, and then a special pot to hold the liquid nitrogen, and you have to have the thing to funnel the liquid nitrogen, and then you have to buy the liquid nitrogen,
Right.
and you have to get a certain amount, or else nobody will sell it to you, and then you have to, and then you should have several different chips on hand for when you inevitably break one. So like, and to find the best one out of the bunch. So like, yeah, people who are doing this now are mostly like sponsored by companies that are or directly work for Intel that are going to give them a bunch of chips and the equipment. But anyway, the guy who was there doing it on behalf of Intel showed us he got it up to 6.9 gigahertz on all 8 cores.
Ooh.
And he said if he was only going for a single core, he could get it up to like 7.3 or 7.4.
Wow.
So, and that's just, and mind you, that was on the day of release that this guy, I mean, obviously he got early access to the chip, but to wait until, all the overclockers, get access, somebody could probably beat that because he's just the first. So, anyway.
That's crazy.
Now a normal person, you're not even really going to use the computer when you have to pour liquid nitrogen on the CPU every minute. Like, how are you going to game? You're going to be like, hey, wait, freeze, pause. Because it doesn't, like, for those who are not familiar, it's like this smoky stuff, and you got to like pour it on periodically. You have like a little coffee mug of it or something, and you just keep pouring it like every minute or so. So like, people who do this is to show that they can.
Yeah.
They may be running a benchmark while they do it to show how high the score is. It's like professional hot dog eating or something like.
Yeah. It's not for any kind of productivity.
Don't try this at home. So or try it at home only to do it. So, but anyway, exciting times. But obviously, the lesson in all of this is, don't believe the spec sheet. Believe objective sites like Tom's Hardware and our colleagues, folks in AnonTech, our sister site, Tech Radar. Like, there's just a lot of people out there who are doing good work, and like, we're not incentivized to fudge the results. We're incentivized to try, and our job is to try and poke a hole and find out. Right. Like, does this really work as expected? And one number that is always wrong every time is the battery life on laptops. But we could spend all day on that. I'll just leave it at that.
For sure. Well, obviously, you have content about this already from the event. If I remember correctly, you guys were publishing like crazy.
Yeah. Well, it was a big day for us. Plus, we've covered several articles on the principal technologies controversy. So you can check all that out at tomshardware.com. And, pretty soon those processors are going to hit the market, and you'll see some reviews from us.
Fantastic. Well, we always appreciate it, Avram. Since we can't be there, since I can't be in the room, I'm glad that you bring the information to us.